Welcome to Superhero Pow. I'm your host nerd, Tom Franklin. Hey, how you doing today? I was hanging out on some websites and even after I've made the definitive video of how many people Batman killed in his rough and tumble first year, spoiler, not as many as you might think, people still like to believe that Batman was a gun-toting vigilante back in the day. So I thought I would post all the pictures of Batman with a gun right here so you can look at him with your own eyes. Find out how many times Bob Kane, or whoever was ghosting him, drew Batman with a gun. Though as a sidebar, one weird thing I was noticing as I was going over these old issues is that a lot of them weren't written by Bill Finger, the guy everyone likes to credit as Batman's creator. Bob Kane just had the name. Bill created everything else. The current story is that Bob had a name for a new Superman-like hero, comic books, Batman, and he would have a cape like bat wings. He talked about it with his friend Bill Finger, who then created everything else we know and love about Batman. Bob Kane then made a pilot story, riffing off a shadow story or ripping off a shadow story, and then sold, or rather licensed, Batman to DC Comics, or National Comics, as it was known back then. DC didn't outright buy Batman until like the 60s. This is why Bob Kane has made out so well with Batman, and everybody else who created a superhero in the 1940s has not made out too well with their characters. Then in Detective Comics number 27, DC published the pilot story, which I guess supposedly came as a somewhat surprise to Bill Finger because it seems like he didn't think the story was going to get published. It was just to be proof of concept. But Bob Kane, thinking, well, I've already done all the work, might as well get paid for it. So the world was introduced to Batman in that pilot story in Detective Comics number 27. The next issue, Detective number 28, we believe it's written by Bill Finger, but honestly, the story is so crude, I'm surprised anyone would take credit for it. But here's the thing, the next 6 issues, Detective Comics number 29 to 34, are supposedly written by Gardner Fox, the guy who helped create the Justice Society and the Justice League. And this guy's a big deal in old comic books. He basically helped create the Golden Age and the Silver Age for DC. But here's the thing about those issues. It's in those issues where we first see the Batplane and the Batarang. So Gardner Fox created those? And even more interesting, Detective Comics number 33, in the Batman's War Against the Dirigible of Doom, that story features the first telling of Batman's origin. Where his parents are killed by the mugger and he decides to be Batman. That story was written by Gardner Fox? Now, I don't know what was going on back then, but clearly the creation of Batman is as twisted a tale as the creation of He-Man. Seems like there's a lot of people who can claim credit for this and that with the character. And Jerry Robinson always liked to claim credit for creating the Joker and Robin. Of course, Bob Kane denies it, but Bob Kane is pretty famous for always looking out for numero uno. So I don't know. Weird things back then. But anyway, let's get back to Batman and a gun. So let's take a look at some Batman with a gun pictures. So here we go. Detective Comics number 32, written by Gardner Fox. And it has Batman going up against the Mad Monk, who in reality is a vampire. So Batman gets himself a handgun and loads it with silver bullets and plugs the sucker in his coffin. So there you go. That's the very first time Batman ever used a gun, and he used it to kill a vampire. Second time we see Batman with a gun, so to speak, is the cover of Detective Comics number 33. Guess you can claim that, well, it's not a gun, but it's a gun holster. You would assume a gun is in there, right? The third time Batman is seen with a gun. Near the end of this story, Batman's war against the dirigibles of doom, the bad guy has some death rays, And yeah, you see those death rays? They look like spotlights. Yeah, those are death rays. Ooh, they make the hair on the back of your neck just stand right up, don't they? Ooh, they're so scary. But anyway, Batman decides he's going to take care of those death rays. So he pulls out a handgun and shoots them. And like any good action movie, one bullet can cause everything to explode into pieces. No more death rays. That's the second time Batman has been seen with a gun. Or sorry, the third time. The cover supposedly is the second one. And then at the end of the story, we get this neat little picture of Batman saying, don't miss an issue of the thrilling new character and his amazing adventures. And Batman's holding the gun again. Gotta say, he's looking very Shadow-like there. You know, the pulp character, the Shadow. That pose is right out of the Shadow. And I think that goes to what I said in my bigger video about this. This is 1939. Superheroes really aren't established yet. So the rules are very loose for superheroes at this point in time. And especially with a character like the Batman, he's borrowing heavily from pulp action heroes, you know, Shadow, Spider, characters like that. All right, here's the next time we see Batman with a handgun. Detective Comics number 35 in the, I was going to say splash page, but it's not really a splash page. Kind of like the intro page of the book. It has nothing to do with the story. If you weren't hip to it, splash pages mainly came from because comic books, when they were first being published, were basically all anthology books. They all had stories in them. So they created the splash page to, you know, promote that this is a new story with a new character within the anthology book. But as you can see here, a lot of times they truncate it because they need more room for story. So the big bold picture saying like, okay, here's the Batman story for this issue. We got a nice big picture of Batman before we get into the story. And he's holding a smoking gun. But in the story itself, there is no handgun to be found. Now, issue 36. Now, Bill Finger takes over as writer. And as far as we know, Bill Finger is kind of like remains the writer of Batman from this point on. This issue features the third time Batman fires a gun. And it's a handgun that I don't know where it came from. It's not really said if he picked it up from the bad guys or if it was his own. But Batman just finishes cleaning a bunch of crooks' clocks. And then he picks up a handgun, fires it into the air, and says, this ought to bring the police in a hurry. Only in comic books and movies, Batman. In real life, I don't think the police are going to come running that fast. Next, we have one of the most infamous uses of a gun by Batman in Batman Comics number 1, which I believe was supposed to be printed in Detective Comics number 38, because the story is teased at the end of issue number 37, Batman and the Monster Men. But DC decided to move some things around, and they decided to introduce Robin in issue number 38. And this story goes into Batman Comics number 1, which back then was a collection of Batman stories. So Batman number 1 didn't feature one story of Batman for the whole issue. It had typically 4 stories of Batman and some other little feature stuck in there. But anyway, this comic features Batman with a machine gun mounted on his bat plane. There he is flying around with it. As the story progresses, the Monster Men are loaded into these purple trucks and are going to be driven into town to just cause havoc all over the place. So Batman dive bombs the truck and opens fire with his machine gun, causing it to crash. Fortunately, it does not kill the Monster Man inside, so instead he throws a rope around the Monster Man's neck and hangs him. This story pulled no punches, didn't it? Now Batman has to track down the second truck. Again, he dive bombs it with his machine gun, causes it to crash. Again, the Monster Man survives and climbs a building, a la King Kong. Batman opens fire with his machine gun again, and it says the bulletproof clothes protect the monster. If bullets don't stop him, I know what will, says Batman. And this time he throws gas pellets at the monster, causing him to choke and cough and then falls off the building. So he's firing a gun, but didn't really kill anybody. We don't know if the drivers of the trucks are okay. I mean, they're probably not okay, but whether or not they're dead, your choice. And you know what? That's about it. That is about it for Batman and guns. Oh, wait, except one more. Yes. Batman decided to pick up a handgun one more time. This is outside of his first year, so I didn't mention it in my first video. But in Batman Comics number 4, Batman happens to be walking down the street or something, and a car with a gunman opens fire on somebody. Batman picks up a handgun and wings the man shooting the gun. It's interesting to point out that, relatively speaking, this is also the first time Batman ever aimed a gun at a normal human being. First time he aimed a gun was to kill a vampire. Second time was to destroy the Death Ray. The third time he shot it in the air to alert the police, and with the machine gun he shot up a monster man to no avail and blasted some trucks. But here he's actually shooting at a human being and wings him with the bullet, so he drops the machine gun he was trying to use to commit murder. Now, by now, this is 1941, and superhero rules have kind of been established by now. And so the editors put a note in the comic book saying, "Editor's note, the Batman never carries or kills with a gun." And that is pretty much it for Batman with guns. The only time you ever see him with a gun again, which happens from time to time, he does some form of target shooting or, trick shot to make something happen. That is it. That is all the times Batman has been shown swinging a gun around. Let's see. Let's count them up here. Let's count up how many pictures we got with Batman with a gun. So Batman is drawn 11 times with a handgun, either in a holster at his side or in his hands. And for the machine gun, 16. So a total of 16 times, counting the 5 times he is using the machine gun. And again, ever since then, superheroes can't use guns. Batman definitely doesn't use guns anymore at that point. I don't know, but in my opinion, that doesn't really make him a rough and tumble vigilante back in the day. But, your mileage may vary. One thing that too many people don't really talk about too much, where if you want to talk about, did Batman kill people in the old days? Well, there were a lot of accidental deaths, I would say, fighting people and they fall on things, they fall out of things. To a certain degree, this happens in comic books to this day on some level. Bad guy always falls off something in the middle of a fight. He's dead or he's not dead, we don't know. And that happened back in the 30s as well. But in one of the stories by Gardner Fox, where he introduced the villain Dr. Death, based on the dialogue, based on the script, Batman purposely killed somebody. In Detective Comics number 30, Dr. Death's minion Mikhail chases Batman with a handgun. Batman jumps out the window, grabs a bat line, swings away from the building. Mikhail sticks his head out the window to see what happened to Batman. Batman swings back towards the window, and as it says, but as Mikhail puts his head through the window, there's a sickening snap as the Cossack's neck breaks under the mighty pressure of Batman's foot. And Batman says, "First Jabba, now you, and yet Dr. Death lives on." Jabba was a character who died in a fire in the last issue. To me, that's the only time I really feel like Batman meant to kill somebody. Like I said, a lot of times it was in fights. He pushed things on people. People fell off of things in the middle of a fight. But this one, he came right down on that guy's neck and killed him square. And if you're curious about what happened to Dr. Death, he just went to jail. Isn't that always the case? The boss gets off and all the henchmen get killed. Incidentally, we wouldn't see Dr. Death again for like another 40 years until Jerry Conway used him in the 1980s. Since then, he's popped up here and there. But as for Batman swinging a gun around, from 1939 to 1941, that's like 37 Batman stories. Only 5 of them depict him with a gun, and there are no human victims. Well, that's all I got to say about the topic. What do you think about all this? Was Batman a killer back then or not? Either way, thanks for spending time with me. And if you could be so kind to like, subscribe, and notify, I'll talk to you again tomorrow. Take care of yourself out there.